Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Bapak Bowo Setiano as my thesis supervisor, the Honorable Board of Examiners. In this occasion, I would like to present my thesis with the title The Effect of Corporate Governance and Cash Flow Leverage on Performance and Risk of Indonesia PLCs. To begin with, let me present research background. The growing number of companies listed on Indonesia Stock Exchange indicates that more companies rely on external source of financing. As we can see from the bar chart, number of companies listed on the capital market has grown steadily over the past 5 years, and in 2020 it accounted for 713 companies, with market capitalization is quite high at around 6.9 thousand trillion rupiah, and number of investors is also quite high. 3.8 million of people has been registered as investors. This positive development offers many alternatives investment choice for investors. However, this good trend seems to not align with development of investor production environment. Utama et al. In 2017 reported corporate governance practice of Indonesia companies was relatively poorer than other countries. The bar charts on the slide reveals that there are only 4 companies from Indonesia ranked on top 50 Asian companies with good corporate governance in 2018. It's far below than Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore. Lower governance practice could lead to a situation where management do not run the company at the shareholders' best interest. Bribery case of PT Lippo Karawaci related to Meikarta property project in Bekasi may serve as good example for this problem. PT Lippo Karawaci stock price has dropped significantly since this case emerged in 2018. Besides lower governance, ownership of listed company in Indonesia is highly concentrated. This ownership often evolves to the situation where control rights is greater than cash flow right, resulting in cash flow leverage or CFL. These situations may affect firm performance and firm risk. Study related to corporate governance and performance has been widely conducted, but most of them use only partial principle of corporate governance as the proxy. Unlike corporate governance, cash flow leverage attracts less attention from researchers. To the best of their knowledge, there is no research has been done to examine the relationship of cash flow leverage, performance, and risk simultaneously. Therefore, this background motivated me to fill the gap by conducting this research. Accordingly, this research then developed problem formulation and led to 5 research questions as follows. First, what is the effect of corporate governance on firm performance? What is the effect of corporate governance on firm risk? What is the effect of cash flow leverage on firm performance? What is the effect of cash flow leverage on firm risk? And ultimately, is there any relationship of performance and risk? Next, we are going to survey some literature and previous results. As Johnson and Meckling proposed in 1976, agency theory provides framework that separation of ownership and control creates principal-agent relationship. Principal delegates some control and authority to agents, but because different interests among them, it creates conflict, called as agency problem type 1. In this case, corporate governance plays important role to reduce this conflict and minimize agency costs. There is another way to deal with this conflict, that is by concentrating ownership. Through this way, concentrated shareholders have sufficient voting rights to control management. However, this type of ownership potentially creates another problem, which is majority versus minority shareholders, or called as agency problem type 2. This problem could be severe in pyramidal structure of ownership. The diagram on the slide provides illustration of how cash flow leverage is derived. For example, it can be seen that cash flow leverage of Mr. Muhtaridi family on PT Madahari department store is 4.66%, obtained from control rights minus cash flow right. The other theories are trade-off and asymmetric information. Trade-off theory stated that the value of levered firm is equal to the value of unlevered firm plus the value of any side effects, including tax shields and expected costs due to financial distress. The excessive use of the trades-off its benefits against higher interest rates and bankruptcy costs. whereas asymmetric information theory related to unbalanced information among company and investor, which result in suboptimal decision in the market. Earhart and Brigham in 2010 argue that asymmetric information determines the way companies select their optimal financing policy, assume that management possesses better information than outside investors. Based on those theories and prior studies, research hypotheses were developed. There are 13 hypotheses in total, with a detailed explanation of each hypothesis can be examined in my thesis document, and in this slide I present only summary of those hypotheses. The relationship of corporate governance and cash flow leverage on firm performance and risk, and interrelationship of performance and firm risk are conceptualized through the following model. Next, we move to the section of how this research was conducted. Purpose sampling method is employed by setting two criteria. First, non-financial companies from Compass in 100 index, and second, companies must consistently present on the index over the period of 5 years. In terms of operation definition, performance and risk use 3 proxies for each. Meanwhile, 9 instrumental variables were used to address endogeneity issue. In addition, there are 7 controlling variables to produce robust results. And then, 2 equations are used to examine simultaneous relation of research variables using 2-stage risk regression method. After filtering initial data, 58 companies are selected as sample. Data cleansing was then performed using median absolute deviation, result in final data of 290 from years observation. The table shows data distribution of all variables. Table 1 and Table 2 present estimation results, but detailed finding will be analyzed in the discussion session later on. Endogeneity issue become concern on the study. To ensure valid results, accuracy tests using post-estimation tests must be conducted. First, based on endogeneity tests, all models show significance of p-value less than 5%, suggesting reject null hypothesis. In other words, all endogenous variables are not exogenous. Next, first-stage regression tests present that all models exhibit F statistic more than 10, except for model 6 that indicate it is weak instrument. Then, over-identification restriction tests present that all models show test statistics are insignificant at 5% threshold, meaning that instrumental variables of all models are well specified and uncorrelated with error terms. Using exact approach, normality test shows that all residual of all models are normally distributed. Ultimately, robust standard error option is employed for all models to deal with heteroscedasticity and autocorrelation issue. The table on the slide presents that 9 out of 13 research hypotheses are accepted at 10% significant level or smaller. Next, we move to the discussion session. Hypothesis 1.A is not supported. This means that corporate governance does not statistically facilitate a company to enhance earning before interest and tax using average total assets. Whereas hypothesis 1.B is supported at 10% level. This finding is consistent with agency theory that under good corporate governance, effective resource allocation and efficient operation can be achieved, result in higher ROE. This is supported by Sheh and Wahyudin and Solika, but inconsistent with Bat and Lang. Hypothesis 1.C is supported at 5% level. Under asymmetric information, disclosure and transparency of good corporate governance provide positive signal for investors, leading to higher stock price and market book ratio. This finding is consistent with Wahyudin and Solika, but not for Sheikh et al. And Radi et al. Hypothesis 2.A is not supported, meaning that corporate governance practice does not statistically affect companies' leverage level. But hypothesis 2.B and 2.C are supported. Under asymmetric information, good corporate governance might be used and benchmark and provide signal for investors to evaluate company risk exposure, meaning that better corporate governance are associated with lower risk level, and thus it leads to Increasing investor confidence toward companies' stock result in stock return less volatile. This finding is consistent with Brick and Jidambaran, Hatani and Wang, but does not support comparison at all. Hypothesis 3.b is not supported. This finding indicates that cash flow leverage does not statistically reduce firm's performance as measured with ROE. Hypothesis 3.a and 3.c are supported. These findings show that higher dispersion of control right and cash flow rights lead to lower firm performance. This dispersion may reflect expropriation of controlling shareholders towards firm's asset at the cost of minority shareholders, indicating that agency problem type 2 present in the company. This finding is consistent with Pepchuk and Clason, also Jara and Shah, Villalonga and other scholars, but does not support Edward and Weinschreider, Jun and Park. Hypothesis 4.8 is not supported. This means that higher dispersion of control rights and cash flow right may curb the use of debt as financing source of company. However, hypothesis 4.b and 4.c are supported for both. The positive effect of cash flow leverage on standard deviation of stock return and stock beta may exemplify that agency problem type 2 where controlling shareholders extract company resources at the expense of minority shareholders. As the effect of cash flow leverage is contrary to the effect of corporate governance, this may provide negative signal for outside investors who then become less confident in company shares, resulting stock return more volatile. This finding supports Laporta and Clason but not consistent with Jara. Ultimately, hypothesis 5 is supported. Results show that negative interrelationship of performance and risk take place on their PEP, their ROE, and MBSD relation. Negative interrelationship of their PEP and their ROE is consistent with trade-off theory view that higher debt is associated with higher bankruptcy costs and financial distress. This finding supports Dalji, Bani Arifin, A. Bates, and other scholars, but do not support Ramli et al. Negative interaction of MBSD indicates that increasing firms' performance lead to decreasing firms' risk, and vice versa. Companies that show high performance will be associated as providing signal of brighter prospect, and investors will be then more confident in keeping firm shares, resulting in stock return less volatile. This finding is consistent with Gaspar Massa and Gus Safikas, but not for Reddy et al. And Sharma et al. Based on estimation results and discussion previously, 5 conclusions can be drawn. First, the effect of corporate governance on firm performance provides mixed results, but overall it positively affects performance. Second, the effect of corporate governance on firm risk present for the result also, but it tends to negatively affect risk. Third, the effect of cash flow leverage on firm performance shows mixed results, but it gravitates to negatively influence performance. Fourth, the effect of cash flow leverage on firm risk also present for the result, but it has tendency to positively affect risk. Finally, negative interrelationship of firm performance and firm risk occur on their PEP, their ROE, and MBSD relation. There are 4 limitations can be identified from the study. Sample from Compass 100 index may not represent the whole phenomena of the market, first. And second, the accuracy of scoring process may influence the quality of the data. And then, not all companies disclose and update their ownership structure. Thus, cash flow leverage variable may less represent the true ownership structure of the company. And finally, as all models are estimated using two-state score regression, the use of different instrumental variables may present different results. This research provides 2 implications. From the theoretical aspect, research finding may pave the way for academicians and future researchers in examining similar topic, but with a greater scope, such as longer observation period and more sample size. In terms of practical aspect, by implementing higher corporate governance practice and reducing cash flow leverage, company could enhance performance and reduce risk. Likewise, By selecting greater corporate governance and lower cash flow leverage firms, investors could make better investment decisions. Finally, the study proposed two recommendations. First, corporate governance and cash flow leverage does not statistically influence debt-equity ratio or leverage. Future research is suggests to use different measurements for leverage, for instance, debt to total asset, or examine debt ratio in more detail. And second, corporate governance score is constructed based on 5 principles. Future research may examine which element that most affect firm performance and firm risk in Indonesia companies. That's all my presentation. Thank you.